Hi guys, welcome to the daily analysis for July 19th. Today's a Thursday. Obviously, we had some unemployment stuff coming out today for the US dollar, which certainly had an effect on the market. And you can probably see by looking at my chart right now that I'm actually long on the euro dollar, and I'll get into that in a minute when I explain kind of what my thought process was on that. But first, let's take a quick peek at what the news is for tomorrow. There's not a lot, but we do have some euro and some pound news. So Eurogroup meetings are going on all day, and that could certainly affect the market. You know, when you have these major political meetings, things are said, people react, and that certainly plays out uh, on the market in different ways. So be aware of that. You know, as you trade, obviously euro is one of the major currencies. So as you trade, keep that in mind. And then first thing in the New York session, as usual, there's an 8:30 a.m. announcement, and that's Canadian. That's core CPI. So obviously that should affect the Canadian dollar, assuming, excuse me, assuming there's a decent variation there. Okay, so that's your basic news, and it's not as much maybe as usual, but certainly that euro stuff could get interesting. All right, the next thing that I want to take a look at is our terms. And again, this is really important. You probably get sick of this if you're used to watching, but it's really important to note that the U.S. government is very strict about this, and they want you to be aware that we're not licensed or qualified to provide investment advice. It's only for education. So if you need to pause the video to watch that, make sure that you do that. Okay. Let's get into trading. Okay, so again, we always start off with euro dollar, but I'm actually long on euro dollar right now, and the reason is because well, there's two reasons. Number one, because we have this kind of hour or excuse me, daily rounding at the bottom that looks like it's circling up, and I'm not sure how high this could go. It might only stop right where it is in this area right now, and turn right back around. But a lot of times when you get these rounds like I've shown here, you can get some momentum building up, and then oftentimes that will catapult your trade up quite a bit. So you see that I have a limit set all the way up here now. It's very unlikely that the price will reach there or that I'll be able to hold on to it until it does. Because I don't really use hard take profits very often. I normally trail my stop up and then I get stopped out eventually. But my hard target is all the way up here, which is like a 25% gain because I have a pretty tight stop loss on there. So obviously a large target, and I'm not exactly expecting to hit that. But with these kind of rounding trades, a lot of times momentum can build up and can really skyrocket a currency pair. And again, we have that news coming out tomorrow. So if there's a lot of positive things said about the euro, which I don't know why there would be, but if there is, I could have a monster day tomorrow and get 5 or 6% on my account just on this pair. And I'll zoom in and show you a little bit better on the hourly why I took these trades. You can see right here on the hourly where my two different entries were. And obviously we have a pretty nice trend line happening right here. So for me, these were pretty much no-brainer trades when I was already looking to go long because of that hour or that daily rounding. Excuse me. But we had, I mean, look at this trend line with these tails and the reversal signs from maybe news blasting it down. But then the euro just really had a desire to go up, and then obviously U.S. dollar got some bad news today, so that that catapulted euro to some extent. And so I got long here, and I was up pretty nicely on this. Didn't quite want to move my stop up and try to get the trade because I thought maybe I could get some more momentum on it. Ended up going back into the negatives on the first position, which was kind of upsetting. But another great bounce off the same trend line, so I got back into the trade. And on this trade, I've never really been down at all. So those are both in play right now, and so there's maybe double the size that I normally would be trading, but I think that they're pretty safe positions. My stop loss is pretty tight, and I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at now. You can see right here I have a smaller limit. This is the limit for this position, I believe, and then I have that much larger limit that you saw, which is 500 pips away and is targeting about 25% of my account. So that's euro dollar. I'm not really bullish on the euro, obviously. but just with the rounding action and the trend line bounces, I decided to go ahead and take the trade. And you know, it's one of those things where you might not totally be interested in taking that trade based on your personal sentiment. But if it's a technical sign that lines up with your trading plan, you know, you got to follow through on that and go for it. And that's what I did. And so far I'm in profit. So I'll let you know how that turns out. Okay, US yen is one that we've been watching now. US yen is interesting because we had this massive momentum-filled downtrend that we talked about for quite some time. You know, this trend line was pretty significant. Every time we got a pop, it continued down, and I thought this was going to last a little bit longer, to be honest. When we got here, which is like at the 78 level, maybe a little lower than 78, price turned around and started heading up. Obviously not consistently up, but up nonetheless, and really didn't make any lower lows until here, where we actually started to peak back down. Okay, so U.S. yen has been indecisive since this point below 78. However, over the past 2 weeks or whatever this little chop has been, maybe it's been 2.5 weeks, there's actually been some consistent downward momentum. Now, obviously not massive, large bars that are just screaming bearish, but you can see that based on this little trend line that I've drawn here, we're actually at a slightly steeper downward trend than we were at this point. So that's something really to take note of. Oftentimes, trades do not look like they're resuming a trend until you kind of put a trend line on there and realize, wow, that really actually is headed downward pretty consistently. So that's something to actually take note of on US yen, and maybe get your bearish sentiment back for US yen, because this is going on, 2.5 weeks of pretty bearish consistent movement. So it's definitely something that I'm taking note of, and might possibly be looking for bearish continuation trades. Now, one thing I would like to see is a little bit of a bounce and then a re-entry, because oftentimes the market is going to move like this on a good trend line. So I want to get in here, 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 not here, 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 here. But either way, a bearish sentiment nonetheless is something that I'd be interested in looking to trade continuation setups on. So interesting little opportunity there with that US yen. It's something honestly I wasn't even paying attention to because I was kind of annoyed that the US yen wasn't doing anything. Okay, pound dollar is one that we've been looking at a lot as well. One interesting thing to note today, not that I'm ready to jump on pound dollar longs quite yet, because I think there's still some places to break, like the 50 fib level. But today we saw a follow through. Yesterday and the day before closed right above this little trend line, which is not much. Obviously, you see that it does follow some lower lows over this little trend line going that way. But it did close above yesterday, or the day before, excuse me, yesterday. And then today it was a serious continuation bar, which also broke through the 382 fib level. So that's something to take note of. And again, I don't know if I'm ready to jump on pound dollar longs quite yet, which is ironic because I'm long on euro dollar, even though pound is obviously in a lot better shape than euro at this point. But still, the technical sign for me isn't quite as good because, number one, it hasn't broken this level with very much authority. It's maybe like a couple pips above that. And number two, we have the Fibonacci level, the 50 Fibonacci level, staring right down at it. So until it conquers that, I'm not really interested in taking longs. But it is important to note that the bullish momentum is getting back into the pound as it broke through this trend line and is headed up. Okay, so we'll see how long this can go. Obviously, way up here is our previous high that we were drawing our fib level from. So really got quite a bit of room to go before we get up into this range. And if it does, hopefully we'll get some longs on the way there, because we don't want to miss a trend like that. Continuing on with our US dollar crosses, we have the odd dollar, which is much stronger than the pound or the euro, and definitely something that we've been long on and looking for longs on. Now, one thing to note with odd dollar is that as much as it's going up right now and longs are looking beautiful, I've drawn some steps here. You can see that I've drawn the steps where these tails have come down, and it looks like we're maybe due for a little, our next step, because it hasn't had a step in quite some time. We might expect that there will be a step in this area or something where we get some bullish candles that come down and touch. Even if it is going to continue upward eventually, it's likely to settle down and and slow down for a little while. Now, the odd has been a pair that Casey and I have been pretty bullish on for a decent amount of time. The issue is that each time that we want to go long on, there's either a major resistance level that's in our way or something like that. However, when it broke through this top right here, even though it was maybe a little late in the game, we already missed 3 bullish bars in a row, it presented us with a pretty good long opportunity. And I think what happened on the trade entry was that Casey zoomed into an hourly or maybe even a 15-minute to get in on this trade, and is holding it as we speak. So I have that account up. I want to show you how he did this because this is pretty good. This is the master account that if you trade the Catapult Pro service, you copy this exact account that I have up right now. This is the account on a VPS. This is literally the account that you're copying if you use that service. So let me show you what happened here. We have this uptrend forming right now, and Casey and I have talked about odd dollar longs are going to be good trades. We know that, we're interested in that, so on and so forth. But that doesn't always mean that there's always going to be the actual technical entry setups just because you have a bullish sentiment on something. So we had to wait for the actual sentiment. So this was a good inside bar here. You can see this one, and then we had a kind of a doji or a stall bar on our next candle. The next candle was a really strong bull, and we were interested in getting in on that. However, it was right at this resistance level where you now see our next entry was, so we were worried about that. Now this third bar, or fourth bar, excuse me, because we had 1, 2, so follow my dots. This fourth bar, you see this tail that came down and kind of centered on the bar. What happened there was we saw that retrace back into the bar, and we call that normally a centering bar. And oftentimes when there's a lot of momentum, you'll get a candle that comes down and centers just to keep people in check and maybe shake some people out who are already long, and then it'll continue in the direction. So as soon as that kind of retreated halfway into that bar, we got really interested in taking a long on that daily bar. And so what happened, once it came down and started turning around, by the time it got back up to this point, which you see is right where our entry is, it was looking like a really nice 8-hour bar continuation, which we don't even have 8-hour charts on MT4, but with other platforms, we look at 8-hour bars, and a lot of times make entries on those. So on the 8-hour bar, it looked like a great continuation. We got in right here on this trade. When I say we, I mean Casey, but I like to take some credit because we looked at this together. But anyway, got in right here and immediately got into profit. And then what happened, you see another entry here. Let me zoom into the hourly so I can show you what happened. Okay, what happened was we got in here and immediately got into profit, which meant that we could put our stop loss up to break even here. So since we got into break even so quickly, we thought, wow, we don't have any risk on this trade. Let's try to make some more money by using the risk that we were going to use on the first trade and go long again. That way, we have double the position size, but we're still only risking the same 1% that we would have in the first place. And you can see it's exactly what we did. This bar catapulted us right into profit in the first hour that we were in the trade. And then we got a nice little stall bar here. And once this started going back up, which I don't know if that was a 15-minute entry or not, but a smaller time frame, we got in again. So we had these two entries, which made obviously our average price here, and our stop loss, was right here. So we had this really tight stop loss, and obviously we knew that with that type of stop loss, if the trade runs, it's going to make us a lot of money without having too much risk. And we didn't have too much risk. We hardly had any because our first position was already locked into break even. And now you see that the trade is up $1,200, almost $1,300, which we have this tool here that shows you how much you're up. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's up $1,270. Which is about 4.2% or something. I looked at my FX book, a little over 4%, I believe. And we have our stop loss locked all the way up here into profit on this account. So that's what's sweet. When you get these trades, or when these trends and your sentiment is long and you're looking for the technical setups, oftentimes you can go in on a smaller time frame. Even if you're looking at the dailies overall, you can go in on a smaller time frame, tighten up that stop loss, and then go for a big hit. And you can see that we're already at a 4-to-1 risk to reward ratio because we're up 4% while only risking 1, and the